Are you unsure about whether or not to buy the new Terraforming Mars Dice Game expansion Missions? Or have you maybe even never heard of Terraforming Mars Dice Game, and this video is playing because you forgot to turn off autoplay? Well, it doesn't really matter, since in this video I will explain very briefly what the dice game is all about, show you what you can expect from this expansion, and give you my unbiased first impression of it. Let's get started. Terraforming Mars Dice Game is a much more simple, quicker, and more luck-based spin-off of Terraforming Mars. It also features a map of Mars, 3 parameters which need to be increased, as well as corporations and project cards. There's a lot of similarities to the main game, but also a lot of differences. For example, the projects can be separated into blue, green, and red cards, but in contrast to the main game, there are no tags on these cards, meaning there's a lot less combo potential, and you also don't flip the red cards after playing them. And while there are 3 parameters, only 2 of them need to be maxed out for the game to end. But the 2 main differences to the main game are the way your turns work and the titular dice. Firstly, your turns. Whenever it's your go, you can choose whether you want to do production or an action turn. On the production turn, well, you take your production, and on the action turn, you play cards, do card actions, and perform standard projects. But yes, you heard right. In this game, your production is not tied to generations, and you can always choose to produce new resources whenever you want. And draw cards, by the way, since you can freely discard as many cards as you want and replenish up to 5 during your production turn. But of course, there's downsides to just producing over and over. First of all, you generally only score points during your action turn. And secondly, when taking production, you have to first give dice away until you only have 3 remaining, so you can't accumulate enormous amounts of resources by producing a couple of turns in a row. But what about these mysterious dice? Well, they represent the resources you need to pay for cards, actions, and standard projects. Whenever you take production in the base game, you take a dice of the respective color, throw it, and the side which turns up on top is now set as a resource in your storage. Generally, when paying for stuff, you need these specific resources and not just a red dice, for example. That means even if you have tons of red dice production, you could get unlucky and not roll the correct red resource. So those were the basics of Terraforming Mars Dice Game. As you might know, I love this game. It's a shorter and simpler version of the original that you can play when you don't have that much time on hand, or when playing with people who are not super into long and complicated board games. So what does the expansion Missions bring to the table? Obviously, a bunch of new corps, projects, bonus cards, and milestones. But more about these later. Because more importantly, it introduces 4 new concepts or mechanics to the game. First of all, the namesake of the expansion, the missions. These are basically continuous mini milestones and therefore a cool new way to score points throughout the game. Until the mission deck runs out, which is highly unlikely, there are always 3 active missions next to the board. As you can see, some require you to achieve one thing, like having 8 cards on hand. Once you achieve that, you instantly, without taking an action and without any cost, win the mission and take its card to your player area, similar to how you claim milestones in this game. Every one mission scores 1 point at the end of the game. In contrast to the first example, most of the missions require you to do 2 things, like placing 2 greeneries or taking 2 production turns. With these missions, you track your progress by placing player cubes on it. So for example, when placing the first greenery, you place 1 cube on it. You then remove all players' cubes when placing the second greenery and take the mission to your player area. The second new concept introduced is Influence. This is the new purple resource dice that you can get via track and placement bonuses, actions and effects, as well as production. In contrast to all other dice colors, you don't only use Influence as a resource to pay for cards, actions and standard projects. Instead, you can always, similar to a free action, exchange these purple dice for either an instant VP or 2 cards, or use it as a wild token, depending on which side of the purple dice faces up. Now we get to 2 new smaller concepts that were introduced with missions. Firstly, icon-specific production. While in the base game you were only ever able to produce resources by rolling dice of a specific color, now some cards allow you to directly take specific resources out of the supply. so taking a dice and placing it in your supply with one specific side facing up. This can of course be better or worse than just rolling dice, depending on whether or not you need the specific resources. At the very least, it provides consistency. And lastly, this expansion introduces cost-specific effects. So blue cards or corps that get triggered whenever you play a card with a specific icon in its cost. This is of course similar to tag effects like Marsu or viral enhancers in the main game. These were the new concepts and mechanics brought to the game, so let's quickly talk about the new corps, projects, bonus cards and milestones. The first of the 9 new corps is Nurgle Enterprises. In contrast to the main game, I mean Prelude 2, where this corp is solid, in Dice Game I think it's quite atrocious. Sure, it can theoretically get up to 6 extra points from its ability, but since its starting resources and production are so low, contesting milestones and awards is nigh impossible. So the ability will score much less in reality. Keep in mind that the influence production is cool, but since only a third of your purple dice throws will actually yield resources that can be used for playing cards, you really shouldn't rely on it for your early economy. Next up, Splice. Again, quite a slow start with low starting resources and production, but this time I think it gets balanced out by an insane ability. Getting a wild token anytime you play a card with a microbe in its cost is insane. And if you start with 1 or 2 of those in your starting hand, I think Splice is an insta-pick. Viren also combos with microbe cards, this time by letting you take an extra main action immediately. Even if you just use that main action as a support action, this ability is crazy strong, as you can freely throw any dice. Compared to Splice, the starting capital is better, but having only one type of prod can hurt. Septim Tribus is the most basic new corp. The only interesting thing about it is its purple dice production. As I said with Nurgle Enterprises, I think purple dice prod is not that great in the early game, but I definitely need to playtest it more. Recyclone has the best starting capital yet. Combined with its strong ability and alright prod, I think this corp is quite strong. Remember, hammers are a common resource, so a lot of cards have them in their cost, and you'll get quite a few green dice for free. Price Star gets a mega credit rebate on an incredible amount of cards. Basically, all cards that do not terraform. That is absolutely insane, but the corp also has quite a slow start. Point Luna is definitely not my favorite. Its ability allows you to draw 2 cards whenever you play a card with an earth in its cost. The problem is that those cards are super rare, and that card draw is not that strong in Dice Game, in my opinion. You can always just do a production turn if you need more cards, and you'll often run out of resources before you run out of cards. At the same time, the starting resources, instant cards and prod are alright, so the ability doesn't need to be super strong. Philaris is super weird, as it requires quite a specific scenario to benefit from its ability. Placing a tile next to exactly 2 other tiles definitely happens quite a lot, and you can also play around it. But if you need to forego other placement bonuses, going for the ability can actually hurt you more than it helps. And lastly, Arclight. Same as with Point Luna, triggering the ability a lot will be hard, since animals are a rare resource and are not on that many cards. But in my opinion, a purple dice is a much stronger reward than 2 cards, so I like Arclight more than Point Luna. The 2 new milestones do not come with an explanation, but I think it's quite clear what they require. To claim Collector, you need to have 2 dice of each color, not counting purple dice. If you compare this milestone to the base game milestones Billionaire and Monopoly, it seems fairly balanced. But first of all, I think those 2 are already quite hard and require quite specific setups to be claimed. And secondly, getting that many different dice will often require quite a diversified economy, which can be hard to achieve. So I feel like Collector is on the harder end and definitely favors corps with a lot of diverse production like Robinson or Polyphemus. Missionary requires you to have claimed 4 missions. I love this milestone, since I can imagine tight races and it can also play out completely differently from game to game, just because the missions are so random. Can't wait to play more with it. The 2 new bonus cards, Role Model and Politician, both grant purple dice and either positive or negative VP. Let's compare them to Breakthrough and Delivery. The game basically assigns similar value to 2 cards, a wild token, and an instant point. Endgame points are obviously a lot less valuable, but let's just assume they are worth roughly the same. Then Breakthrough, Delivery, and Politician all have a value of 2, while Role Model has a value of 3. But of course, since 2/3 of its value stem from game endpoints, it's not as good as it seems. I think these two new additions are balanced quite well. And lastly, the new project cards. There are 27 of them, so I obviously won't go through them one by one. In general, there are a ton of cards that allow you to get purple dice either instantly, via production, or through actions and effects. Then there are quite a few resource-specific production cards. And lastly, there are 2 more miscellaneous cards. That is all of the new content and missions, the new expansion for Terraforming Mars Dice Game. So what's my opinion on it? Honestly, I really like it. I haven't played that much with it yet, but I think the missions and the new purple dice are super cool. I also like the new resource-specific production and combo cards. Furthermore, I think the value of this expansion is quite great. For the price, I think it adds a lot of replayability to the game, not only through the new mechanics, but also through the 9 new corporations. I only really have 2 gripes with it. Firstly, the packaging could have been much better. It looks and feels like a glorified card game packaging and is not sturdy at all. I wish they had gone for packaging similar to the Prelude expansion for the main game. Secondly, some of the artwork. We all know that the Terraforming Mars creators have a questionable stance on the use of AI and prefer using AI artwork instead of paying real humans for creative work. This time, it's really noticeable. Some of the artwork looks so glaringly like AI slop that it kinda pulls me out of the experience. Obviously, that was only my unbiased but of course subjective opinion on the game. Let me know in the comments what you think of missions. Do you already own it, or are you still on the fence about whether or not to buy it? Also, if you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe and follow me on Twitch. I hope I see you in the next video. Have a good one guys, and goodbye.